As I was saying, Admiral, the young lieutenant's voice dripped with arrogance. He was guiding a visiting admiral through the USS Iowa Museum. This is the Mark 7, fires a 2,700-pound shell. A quiet voice came from behind them. 2,701 pounds, Lieutenant. We called her Katie. The lieutenant spun around, furious at the interruption. He saw a frail old man in a VFW cap who had tagged along with the tour. With all due respect, sir, he scoffed. I'm the expert here. The admiral, however, had frozen. He wasn't looking at the lieutenant. He was staring at the old man. Good God, the admiral whispered. You're Gunner Rourke, aren't you? The lieutenant had no idea he had just corrected the last living chief gunner of the Iowa. Where are you watching this story from? Let us know in the comments. If this journey of valor touched you, consider subscribing to Silent Veterans and help us give a voice to more incredible stories of our silent veterans. The Fayetteville County Animal Shelter was a place of conflicting noises. The front lobby, painted in a cheerful but peeling shade of yellow, was a high-pitched, yipping chorus of adoptable puppies in stainless steel pens, a sound designed to manufacture hope. Further back, in the Serenity Wing, was the quiet, desperate, and constant meowing of cats. And then, from the back, from Quarantine Kennel C, there was the other sound. It was a deep, guttural, chest-tearing snarl, a sound that didn't just pierce the air, it tore it. It was followed, every few seconds, by the percussive, metallic thud of a heavy body slamming against a steel cage door. It was a place of smells, too. The sharp, overwhelming chemical burn of bleach, a constant, failing effort to mask the underlying, primal sense of animal fear, urine, sickness, and a profound, lingering despair that clung to the concrete walls like moss. In the center of this, in a cramped cinder block office piled high with intake forms and donation bags, sat Mark. Mark was 35, the shelter manager. He was not a dog person or a cat person. He was a logistics person. He was a man drowning in a sea of bad math. Too many animals, not enough space, not enough funding, and far, far too much public opinion. He was a man of rules, of regulations, of liability forms. Rules kept the shelter from being sued. Rules kept the animals in line. And right now, the rules were failing him. I don't care, Sarah, he barked into his phone, pinching the bridge of his nose so hard his knuckles went white. I don't care if the Save Them All bloggers get upset. The dog in QC, M882, has to go. He failed his temperament test. He failed it spectacularly. He bit Dr. Evans. He put 2 new dents in the steel cage door this morning. He is a liability, not a pet. I want him on the euthanasia list for tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. End of discussion. Sarah, a young volunteer at the front desk, shrank on the other end of the line. But, Mark, he's a veteran, a military dog, MWD 882. He's not a veteran, Mark snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. He's a failure. He washed out of the MWD program. He's damaged goods. He's a 90-pound killing machine with a broken brain. We can't adopt him out. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. It's over. He slammed the phone down just as a wealthy-looking couple in matching athleisure wear walked in, their eyes immediately drawn to a golden doodle mix in the first pen. Mark's face instantly, mechanically, transformed. His deep frown was replaced by a wide, plastic smile. Welcome to Fayetteville County. Can I help you find your new best friend? Into this precise scene, the automatic doors slid open with a quiet hiss. Eli Thorne rolled in. At 82, Eli was the picture of frail age. He was thin, his shoulders stooped in the seat of his standard-issue VA wheelchair, a man who looked like he weighed less than the dog in the back. He wore a simple pair of worn jeans and the same bright red zip-up windbreaker he wore every day, regardless of the weather. His hands, gnarled with arthritis and liver spots, rested on the wheels of his chair, his movements slow, deliberate, and economical. His face was a roadmap of a long, hard life, but his eyes were the contradiction. They were a pale, placid blue, and they seemed to absorb the room's chaos without reflecting any of it back. He was, in every sense, the invisible old man, a piece of scenery. The wealthy couple barely glanced at him, stepping around his chair as if he were a piece of luggage. Mark, busy with the real adopters, just saw another potential problem, another civilian to manage. Eli rolled quietly past the front desk, past the wall of Pet of the Week photos. He didn't stop at the puppy room. He didn't pause at the cat wing. His movements were slow but purposeful. He was heading toward the back, toward the noise. "Sir?" Sarah, the young volunteer, called out, her voice nervous as she hung up the phone. "Sir, can I help you?" "The adoptable dogs are all up here in the front." "Just looking, young lady." Eli's voice was a quiet, dry rasp, like leaves skittering on pavement. He rolled past the adoptable and wing, past the hopeful, barking hounds, and into the stray and take hallway. The air here was thicker, the smell of fear more potent. The cheerful yellow paint gave way to bare, gray concrete, the sounds more desperate, and the noise, the snarling and slamming, was much, much louder. At the end of the hall was a heavy steel door marked Quarantine Kennel C, Staff Only, Authorized Personnel. Eli was rolling right for it. "Sir?" Sarah's voice was panicked now. She ran from behind the desk. "Sir, you can't go down that row. That's for staff only. It's not safe. We have aggressive animals back there." Just then, Mark, having finished with the couple, came out of his office. He saw where the old man was heading. He saw the breach of his rules. His face went dark with rage. "Hey, you!" he shouted, striding down the hall, his rubber-soled shoes squeaking with authority. "Stop right there. I am the manager of this facility, and you are not authorized to be in this section. This area is off limits." Eli stopped his chair, not because of the shouting, but because he had arrived. He was 10 feet from the last cage on the left. The cage was shaking. Inside was a 90-pound Belgian Malinois. He was a creature of scarred raw muscle. His fur was patchy, his muzzle crisscrossed with white scars. One ear was torn, permanently flopped over. And his eyes were yellow, raging fire. He was slamming his body against the steel door, a deep, terrifying, continuous roar ripping from his chest. "M882, Mark said, getting in front of Eli's chair, using his body to block the view. "That's him. The one I was just talking about. He's a killer. He's purebred aggression. He's going to be put down tomorrow, and you, sir, are a liability I don't need." Mark radiated annoyance. He saw a frail old man in a wheelchair, a perfect victim. "Sir, you need to stay back. That cage isn't safe." Mark's voice was sharp. He pointed to the back cage, where the massive, scarred Malinois was snarling and slamming itself against the steel. The veteran ignored him. With a slow, deliberate push on his wheels, Eli rolled his chair around Mark, his eyes never leaving the dog. "Sir, I'm warning you. That cage isn't safe. He'll bite your hand off." Eli rolled closer. The dog gathered itself, a knot of coiled muscle, and lunged, its teeth snapping, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The dog hit the steel door so hard the entire frame shuddered on its hinges, and then it froze. The dog is in the middle of a snarl, its lips still curled back, just stopped. It landed on its front paws, its head cocked, its body rigid. The raging fire in its yellow eyes was suddenly banked, replaced by a look of confusion. It stared at the man in the chair. The man in the chair just sat there, serene. He did not flinch. He did not gasp. He did not move. He just watched the dog, his expression one of faint, sad recognition. The entire kennel, which had been a symphony of terrified barks, went dead silent. "He's not angry," the vet whispered, his voice so quiet it was almost inaudible. "He's just lost." Mark, his face a mask of disbelief and rage, had had enough. This old fool was going to get himself hurt, and it was going to be his lawsuit. He reached out and grabbed the handle of Eli's wheelchair. "That's it. You're done. I'm taking you." The worker was about to grab the chair. He had no way of knowing he was watching a retired Delta K-9 handler reunite with the only other soul in the room who understood the cost of war. The moment Mark's fleshy hand clamped down on the wheelchair's handle, a switch was thrown. Eli's left hand, the one that had been resting peacefully on the wheel, moved. It was not a move. It was an event. It shot out with a speed that defied the man's 82 years. A blur of liver-spotted skin and gnarled knuckles. It wasn't a grab. It was a clamp. Eli's fingers, suddenly like steel talons, locked onto Mark's wrist. It wasn't a strike. It wasn't a punch. It was a precise, technical application of force. Eli's thumb pressed down, hard, on the ulnar nerve, his fingers digging into the tendons on the other side. It was a pain compliance hold, taught in places that don't officially exist, designed to drop a man without a sound. Mark screamed. It was a high-pitched, involuntary shriek that was more bird-like than human. His knees buckled. He instantly released the wheelchair, his eyes wide with shock and pure agonizing pain. "Don't." Eli's voice was no longer a rasp. It was a low, cold whisper that held no serenity at all. It was the sound of gravel grinding. Touch. The chair. He held the grip for one more second, his pale blue eyes locked on Mark's, and then released. Mark stumbled back, cradling his wrist, his face a mask of terror and disbelief. He assaulted me. Sarah, you saw that. He broke my wrist. He's crazy, both of them." "I didn't break it," Eli said calmly, turning his attention back to the dog. His serenity had returned as if it had never left. "If I had, you would know. Now, if you're done, I'd like to see the dog." Mark was speechless. He was breathing hard, a mix of pain and adrenaline. He looked at the old man, then at the dog, and saw not two separate beings, but one, unified, terrifying problem. Eli, ignoring the fuming manager, pushed his chair closer. He was now 3 feet from the cage. The massive Malinois, M882, Havoc, was not snarling. He was whining, a low, desperate, confused sound from deep in his chest. He sank to his belly, his ears pinned back, his body language a perfect, heartbreaking picture of submission and fear. He crawled toward the front of the cage, pushing his nose through the small gap at the bottom, still whining. Sarah, the young volunteer, stepped forward, her hand over her mouth. How are you doing that?" she whispered. He's never done that. He's never been quiet. He's terrified." "He's not terrified," Eli said, his voice soft again. "He's talking. He's just telling me he's scared, that he doesn't know the rules anymore, that he's lost." Eli looked at the dog's scarred muzzle. He saw the telltale marks of a muzzle-fighting harness. He saw the scar on his haunch, not a bite mark, but a healed, jagged, shrapnel wound. "What's his name?" Eli asked Mark, his eyes still on the dog. "M882, Mark spat, rubbing his wrist. "They call him Havoc. Failed MWD. I told you, he didn't fail," Eli interrupted. "He was hurt. He's a hero, not a failure. He's just waiting for his handler, and his handler's not coming." Eli nodded, as if confirming something to himself. He leaned forward in his chair, and he spoke. It was not English. It was a short, 2-syllable, guttural sound. A mix of German and Dutch, a command from a training manual written in 1970, a manual only a handful of men had ever read. "Pass up." "Watch." The dog instantly snapped. His whining stopped, his submission vanished. He rocketed to his feet and slammed into a perfect sphinx position. Paws crossed, head up, ears forward, body quivering with a massive, coiled energy. He was no longer a lost dog. He was a weapon, waiting for a command. Mark and Sarah were stunned into silence. What was that?" Mark whispered. "What did you say?" "Just something I remembered," Eli said. He looked at the dog's tag, M882. He looked at the dog's ear, where a faded blue tattoo was barely visible. The sound of the command triggered a memory in Eli's own mind. It dissolved the gray concrete walls of the shelter. He wasn't in Fayetteville. He was in the humid, suffocating darkness of Panama, 1989. He wasn't in a wheelchair. He was low-crawling through jungle mud. Beside him, silent as a shadow, was his first K9, Rico. They were on the trail of a high-value target, a sudden burst of gunfire. Rico had lunged, taking a bullet meant for Eli. Eli had held him, felt the dog's life ebb away, his own hands covered in the blood of his partner. He had whispered that same command, "O pass up," and the dog, dying, had tried to lift his head, tried to obey, even in death. Eli blinked, the painful memory receding. He looked at Havoc, who was holding the position, a perfect mirror of Rico. Mark, now convinced the old man was some kind of sorcerer, was still focused on his own problem. "I don't care what tricks you can do. He's still a liability. And now you're a liability. You assaulted me. I'm calling animal control, and I'm calling the police. I want you both out of here. Now." Mark stormed off toward his office, his phone already in his hand. Sarah, the volunteer, was left alone with Eli and the dog. She looked at Havoc, who was still holding the pas-op position, his eyes locked on Eli. Then she looked at the old man. She was from a military family. She knew the look of a man who had seen things. She knew the command structure. She pulled out her own phone. She didn't text. She dialed a number she knew by heart. "Master Sergeant Reynolds," a gruff voice answered. "Uncle Joe, it's Sarah. I'm at the shelter. You need to get here. Right now." "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No, but there's an old man here in a wheelchair, and there's an MWD, a Malinois named Havoc, M882. The manager says he's a killer. But the old man, he talked to it, in some language, and the dog, it just snapped to attention. And now the manager's calling the cops to have the old man arrested." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Sarah," her uncle's voice was suddenly very, very serious. "What did you say the dog's number was?" "M882, Havoc. Why? And the old man, what does he look like?" "Old, white hair, in a wheelchair. He's very calm. But his eyes, they're not. And Uncle Joe, he hurt Mark. He grabbed his wrist. I've never seen anyone move that fast." Another silence. Longer this time. "Sarah, I'm making a call. You keep that man there. Do not, under any circumstances, let him leave. And do not let the police put hands on him. I think I know who that is. I'll be there in 10. The line went dead. Mark returned, a smug, triumphant look on his face. "All right, old man, show's over. The police are on their way to take your assault report. And Animal Control is sending a transfer truck to take the dog to the state facility for assessment. You're done here. He's not going anywhere." The voice was new, deep, and full of an authority that Mark had never heard. The front doors of the shelter had opened, but it wasn't the police. A man in a crisp OCP uniform stood there. On his chest were the jump wings and the combat infantryman badge. On his collar was the silver eagle of a full-bird colonel. "Mark?" the colonel asked, his eyes scanning the lobby. "I'm Colonel Hayes, from Fort Liberty. I got a concerned call about one of my men." Mark, his eyes wide, was confused. "Your men? We don't have any soldiers here." "Oh, you mean the dog?" He laughed nervously. "He's not your man, Colonel. He's a failure. He's dangerous." Colonel Hayes's eyes narrowed. "But I'm not talking about the dog." He walked past Mark, past Sarah. He walked down the quarantine hall, his polished boots clicking on the concrete. He saw the dog, Havoc, still holding the perfect Pass-Op-Jung-Sphinx, and he saw the old man in the wheelchair. The colonel stopped. He looked at the man's serene, lined face. He looked at the red windbreaker. He looked at the wheelchair. He snapped to the sharpest, most breathtaking salute of his entire career. "Sergeant Major Thorne," Hayes said, his voice thick with an emotion Mark couldn't identify. "Sir, I can't believe it. We heard you were gone." Mark's world tilted. He looked at the frail old man, then at the saluting colonel, then back. "Sergeant Major, what are you talking about?" He's a volunteer, A janitor. Colonel Hayes's salute did not waver. He held it for a full 5 seconds, his gaze locked on Eli, until Eli, with a faint, sad smile, gave a slow, respectful nod. Only then did the colonel drop his hand. He turned to Mark, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Janitor," he said, his voice a low, lethal whisper. You think this is a janitor?" He pointed a rigid finger at Eli. "This is Sergeant Major Elias, Eli Thorne. He is the man who founded the K-9 unit for 1st SFOD. He's not a dog whisperer. He wrote the book. The commands you just heard him use, the ones that dogs snap to. He invented them in a hut in Panama." Hayes turned his attention to the dog, Havoc, who was still holding his position, his eyes now locked on the colonel, as if recognizing a familiar uniform. "And this dog?" Hayes said, his voice softening with respect. "M-882. Havoc. I know this dog. We all do." He looked at Mark. His handler, Sergeant Price, was KIA in Syria last year. Havoc took 3 bullets. 3, pulling the rest of Price's team out of a burning building. He's not failed. He's a hero. He's just lost. He's grieving. He's a one-handler dog, and his handler is gone. He hasn't responded to anyone. Until now. Hayes looked from the heroic dog to the legendary man. They're the same. They're both just waiting for a mission, waiting for a handler. The revelation hung in the sterile air. Sarah was crying silently, her hand over her mouth. Mark was a pale, sickly gray. He had insulted, threatened, and called the police on a living legend. He had tried to euthanize a 4-legged hero. I didn't know," Mark stammered, his entire worldview collapsing. "You didn't ask," Hayes snapped. "You saw a problem. A liability. A number on a form. You didn't see the man. You didn't see the warrior." Eli cleared his throat. "He's not lost, Colonel. He's just waiting. He needs a handler. Someone who speaks the language." Eli looked at the dog. He gave another quiet, one-word command. "Zit." "Sit." Havoc instantly broke the Sphinx and sat, his tail giving a single, hopeful thump on the concrete. Eli looked at the cage door. "Open it." I can't," Mark stammered. "He's a biter. The liability. The paperwork." "Open the cage, Mr. Mark," Colonel Hayes said, his voice now flat, cold, and final. "That's an order. My men are outside. We're adopting him, now." Mark, trembling, fumbled with the key ring. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the lock. I can't," Eli sighed. He rolled his chair forward. "Give them to me, son." Mark handed the keys to the old man. Eli, with one steady hand, selected the correct key, rolled up to the cage, and jammed it into the lock. With a loud clack, the door swung open. Mark flinched, ready to run. Sarah gasped. The massive Malinois, the killer, the liability, walked slowly out of the cage. He ignored Mark. He ignored the colonel. He walked directly to the wheelchair. He stopped, his head level with Eli's knee. He looked up at the old man, his deep brown eyes no longer fiery but soft, searching. Eli reached out his gnarled, trembling hand. He placed it on the dog's massive, scarred head. The dog didn't flinch. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing, a low, rumbling whine coming from deep in his chest. "We're both a little broken, aren't we?" Eli whispered, scratching the dog's torn ear. "Both of us. Just old pieces of equipment. Leftovers from the war." Eli looked up at Mark, his eyes serene but with an edge of steel. "You see liability, son. You see a killer. You know what I see?" Eli stroked the dog's neck. "I see loyalty. I see a heart so big it broke when it lost its purpose. You don't throw away something just because it's broken. You give it a new mission." Just then, the front doors opened again. This time, it was the general in the formula. 2 active-duty K-9 handlers from Fort Liberty entered, their uniforms crisp. They were the ones Master Sergeant Reynolds had called. They saw Colonel Hayes and snapped to attention. "Sir, At ease, Hayes said. You're late. Sorry, sir. We were looking for Sergeant Major Thorne. Master Sergeant Reynolds said he was here. Then, the two handlers saw him. They saw the old man in the wheelchair. They saw the dog, Havoc, a dog they all knew by reputation, with his head in the old man's lap. Their jaws dropped. They were looking at the man who had written their doctrine. Sergeant Major, one of them whispered, his voice full of awe. Sir, it's an honor. At ease, Sergeant, Eli said, his voice kind. We'll take the dog, sir, the handler said, holding up a heavy-duty leash. We have a place for him at the handler's memorial. He'll be retired with honors. No, Eli said simply. Everyone froze. Sir? The handler asked. Eli looked at the dog, who was now resting his head on his lap, his eyes closed, finally at peace. He's not going to a memorial. He's coming with me. He's my dog. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Sergeant Major. Sir, that's a 90-pound MWD. He's a handful, and you're in a wheelchair. Eli looked up from the dog, his pale blue eyes suddenly sharp, the steel returning. And I'm a 140-pound Delta operator, Colonel. We'll manage. We're the same, him and me. We just need a new mission. He looked at Havoc, who thumped his tail. I think we just found it. A month later, a sunny park in Fayetteville, Eli Thorne is rolling down the path in his wheelchair. The chair has been modified. A custom-built, heavy-duty leash bracket is welded to the frame. Trotting beside him, his head held high, his gait proud and purposeful, is Havoc. He's not snarling. He's not pulling. He's in a perfect heel position, his eyes constantly flicking to Eli, watching, protecting. Sarah, the volunteer, is walking with them, holding a cup of coffee. He looks different, Sarah says. He looks happy. We're both happy, Eli says, stopping his chair. And we both have a job. I watch him, and he watches me. A few yards away, Mark, the shelter manager, is on his hands and knees in the grass. He's not in his work uniform. He's in jeans, and he's clumsily, patiently, trying to get a small, fluffy golden retriever puppy to chase a ball. He's not a manager today. He's a volunteer. Come on, boy. Come on. Eli watches, a small smile on his face. He's learning. He's learning, Sarah agrees. Eli looks at Havoc. He gives a quiet one-word command. Watch. Havoc instantly sits, his gaze shifting from Eli to the park, his ears up, his body alert. He is no longer lost. He is on duty. Eli leans back in his chair, his serene gaze on the horizon. He is no longer lost either. Some heroes walk on 2 legs. Some walk on 4. But the most broken ones are often the ones who know how to heal each other. They don't need to be fixed. They just need a new mission. If this story of 2 broken veterans finding each other moved you, please hit the like button, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Silent Veterans for more stories of the unassuming heroes who walk among us.